If this sounds like another story about prices moving higher, if it feels like just one more cycle in the metals market, then the real message is already being missed, because this is not about silver becoming expensive. It is about silver becoming unavailable. A 73% collapse does not happen because of noise. It happens when years of quiet decisions finally surface, when something essential drains away without headlines, and only becomes visible when it is almost gone. The $135 future is not a promise of profit. It is a signal of stress, a point where systems begin to reveal what they can no longer hide. What follows reshapes industries, forces governments into difficult choices, and separates those who prepared from those who assumed stability would last. Welcome to Boring Currency Index. This channel is for those who have lived through cycles, who understand that real economic risk rarely announces itself loudly. If that sounds like you, take a moment to subscribe, because this is not speculation. It is preparation. And let us know, from where in the world are you watching this unfold? At first glance, many observers believe this story is about market movement. They see silver prices rising and assume familiar causes, monetary policy, inflation, or temporary demand. This way of thinking is common, but it focuses on surface effects rather than underlying structure. What is unfolding is not driven by enthusiasm or speculation. It is driven by absence. When a critical material begins to disappear from a system, price reacts only after flexibility is gone. By then, adjustment becomes painful. Silver occupies a unique position in the modern economy. It is not used because it is fashionable or symbolic. It is used because it performs better than alternatives. It carries electricity efficiently, resists degradation, and operates reliably under stress. Entire industries depend on it without offering substitutes. For much of its history, the United States recognized this reality. Silver was treated as a strategic resource. It was stored to provide security during disruption. Over time, that view faded. Strategic thinking gave way to short-term efficiency. The 73% decline in reserves reflects this shift. It is not the result of a single mistake, but of many small decisions that appeared reasonable in isolation. Together, they remove depth from the system. When reserves disappear, resilience disappears with them. There is no buffer when supply tightens. There is no delay when disruption occurs. Every shock is transmitted directly into prices, production, and planning. The current market price does not yet reflect this fully. Markets adjust slowly, then suddenly. Understanding what has already been lost is essential, because once strategic control is gone, the future no longer offers easy options. The loss of America's strategic silver position did not happen overnight. It began during a period of calm when stability created confidence, and confidence slowly turned into complacency. For much of the 20th century, the United States viewed silver through a strategic lens. It was stored not for profit, but for protection. That thinking changed after the Cold War ended. Efficiency replaced resilience as the dominant policy objective. Strategic reserves were no longer seen as protection, but as idle assets. Gradually, silver reserves were sold. As reserves declined, domestic mining weakened. Refineries consolidated or moved abroad. Capacity was not just reduced, it was dismantled. Today, the United States faces a reality shaped by those earlier choices. Silver must be imported. Access depends on political stability and foreign priorities. The 73% collapse is not merely a number. It represents the erosion of strategic depth. This is the cost of mistaking efficiency for security. Strategic materials do not forgive neglect. They simply disappear until the moment they are urgently needed. Understanding how control was lost is essential because recovery is far more difficult than preservation. Silver does not disappear in theory. It disappears in practice, inside supply chains that were never designed for stress. For years, the United States operated under the belief that global markets would always deliver what was needed when it was needed. That belief shaped how industries were built and how risk was managed. Modern manufacturing depends on silver in ways that are not easily visible. It is present in electronics, energy systems, transportation, and defense technology. In many of these uses, silver cannot be replaced without loss of performance or reliability. It is chosen not because it is cheap, but because it works. As domestic reserves declined, dependence on foreign supply increased. Mining shifted overseas. Refining capacity concentrated in a few regions. This created efficiency, but it also created exposure. When supply chains are long and narrow, they break easily. The problem is not just where silver comes from, but how quickly it can be replaced. New mines take years to develop. Refining capacity cannot be expanded overnight. Even when prices rise, physical supply responds slowly. This creates a mismatch between demand and availability. Businesses often assume that higher prices will solve shortages. That logic works only when unused capacity exists. In the silver market, that capacity is limited. Years of underinvestment left little room to respond when demand accelerated. This fragility becomes visible only during disruption. When trade slows, when regulations tighten, or when geopolitical priorities shift, supply no longer flows freely. Companies then compete for the same limited material. Contracts become uncertain. Delivery times extend. Costs rise without warning. For the United States, this dependence has strategic consequences. Industries critical to infrastructure and security rely on a material sourced and processed elsewhere. Control over timing, volume, and price is reduced. The 73% reserve collapse magnifies this weakness. Without stockpiles, there is no buffer. Without buffer, every disruption becomes immediate. This is not a theoretical risk. It is a structural one. Supply chains, built for efficiency, cannot suddenly behave as systems of resilience. They fail fast. Understanding this fragility explains why silver's disappearance matters far beyond markets. It reveals why scarcity, once visible, accelerates, and why systems without depth do not bend, they break. The number $135 is often presented as a future price. Many assume it is a target based on optimism or market excitement. In reality, it represents something far more serious. It reflects a level where the silver market begins to expose its structural limits. Prices in commodity markets usually rise to balance supply and demand. And when material is available, higher prices encourage more production. When material is scarce, prices rise until demand slows. The problem with silver is that supply cannot respond quickly enough to price signals. This makes the adjustment process unstable. As silver becomes harder to source, buyers do not disappear. They compete. Industrial users, governments, and institutions all need the same material. Each group is willing to pay more to protect its operations. At a certain point, price no longer reflects value. It reflects urgency. The $135 level marks that transition. It is not where demand disappears, it is where stress becomes visible. At this level, businesses must make difficult decisions. Margins shrink, projects are delayed, long-term plans are reconsidered. For manufacturers, silver is still affordable even at higher prices because it represents a small portion of total costs. This means demand does not fall quickly. Instead, buyers absorb the increase and pass costs forward. Inflationary pressure spreads through supply chains. Governments face a different challenge. They do not buy silver to sell products. They buy it to secure capability. Once silver is classified as critical, price sensitivity declines. Access becomes more important than cost. This is why $135 should be seen as a signal, not a ceiling. It indicates that existing systems are failing to clear the market smoothly. When prices reach this point, volatility increases. Delivery terms tighten. Physical supply becomes more valuable than paper contracts. For entrepreneurs and business leaders, this environment demands preparation. Input costs may remain elevated. Supply reliability becomes a competitive advantage. Those who planned for abundance will struggle. Those who planned for constraint will adapt. The deeper risk lies in timing. Markets often adjust suddenly after long periods of calm. When confidence breaks, responses are rapid and disorderly. Businesses that wait for clarity often find it arrives too late. Silver's disappearance from strategic reserves removes the safety net. Without reserves, there is no way to slow adjustment. Price becomes the only tool left to ration demand. The $135 level represents the moment when that reality becomes impossible to ignore. It signals the end of assumptions built on excess supply. From that point forward, silver is no longer just an input. It becomes a strategic factor shaping decisions across the economy. Understanding this shift is essential, because once systems enter this phase, they rarely return to the old balance.